something new. Stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop. Oh, no.
What's going on, guys? Marcus here, back in the shop. If you're not aware, Method Man, Mr. Method Man, just dropped his first solo album in like 10 years, The Meth Lab. His last album was 421 The Day After. It was a pretty dope album. This was like back in 06 when I was in high school. It was definitely a turnaround from that failure to Cal-O the prequel, which I just could not stand. And after that, we had a couple albums, not necessarily solo albums, but we had Blackout 2, 8 Diagrams, and the last Wu-Tang album, which I wasn't very happy with. Now, a little background story. Wu-Tang is actually my favorite group pretty much of all time. I remember being 12 years old and they were dropping a greatest hits album. This was before 8 Diagrams, so this was a long time ago. And I was just getting into the culture. I was just getting into hip hop, and at that time I was a huge Rockefeller fan. If you saw me back in the day, you'd see me wearing a Rockaware sweatsuit with the S. Carters and the matching fitted. Straight whack, man. I look crazy now that I think back on it. But I just remember me just being a huge fan after listening to that album. It was such an eye-opener of what East Coast 90s music was back in those days. Just with RZA's gritty, violent beats with the kung fu samples and the violin screeching in the background. It was just totally different to me compared to everything else that was going on at that time. Needless to say, I fell in love with that group just off the Greatest Hits album, so I started to do some more digging, and that's when I stumbled onto Enter the 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang Forever, Iron Flag, which is classics to me, hood classics like Triumph, Cream, Protect Your Neck. I also dug into the actual solo albums like GZA's Liquid Swords, Meth's To Cal, Ghost's Iron Man, Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links. This was just my era. These were just, I still consider timeless albums that I'll still listen to now in 2015. I still listen to this music. Somewhere along the line, the past 10 years, Wu-Tang's music, I feel like the quality's dropped. As we all know, if you are a Wu-Tang fan out there, they're not the closest like they used to be. They still consider themselves brothers, but they start low-key dissing each other. To me, it just became a mess. Like, I still am a fan of their music, but it's that soul and the heart's not there for a lot of the albums that do come out. Now, out the whole group, I've always thought that Meth was the most youthful and the guy that I could pretty much relate the most. Not his weed smoking habits, I'm not talking about that, but just his charisma, his goofy personality. He was always the guy in the forefront. You see him in movies and TV shows. He had no problem being a feature artist. You even see him in video games. To me, he was the coolest out the group. Not necessarily my most favorite lyricist, but he was definitely the coolest. He was the guy that I would love to hang out with for a day back when I was like 15. But I don't know, man, somewhere along the line, all that's changed. We see him in interviews and he's still, somewhat goofy and silly, but I feel like he complains way too much of what the rap game is now. I mean, I'm not a fan of it either, especially what we hear on the radio in like the past 10 years. A lot of it's a bunch of garbage. But as things evolve in time, you just have to, just go with the flow. If you're not going to appreciate the culture for what it is now, then don't complain, because we still had music from the 90s and the 80s. That's the golden era of hip hop. To me, it is as well. But you still got to appreciate certain artists. Just because they're on the radio doesn't necessarily mean that's what hip hop is all about. And I don't want to say Method Man doesn't understand that, because I'm sure he does. He doesn't listen to none of that garbage, but when it comes to making an album and whatnot, I feel like you have to be aware of what's going on in the game. So with that being said, the Meth Lab wasn't necessarily a solo album, it was more of a compilation. Honestly, I'd rather him title it something else, like Method Man Presents Rappers from Staten Island or whatever, because this album was chock full of guys from Staten Island, from his hood. Other than features like, Redman, Corey Guns, who is not from that borough. I'm not sure what Corey Guns is. I think Corey Guns is from Brooklyn. That's all it was, just a bunch of Staten Island rappers just jumping on a joint and just spitting together, which was dope. I like the album for what it was, but let's not call it a Method Man solo, because it wasn't. You didn't call the Blackout 2 or the original Blackout a Method Man album. You called it Redman and Method Man. So you see what I'm saying there? Maybe you shouldn't have called it that. Now, with all that being said, I felt like the album was decent for what it was. I felt like all the featured artists, from Ray to Deck to Mac Wilds to Street Life, Easy Get Ride, these guys did their thing for the most part. I wasn't really wowed, but I mean, at the same time, I wasn't disappointed. This album shows that Meth still got it. He still spits that hardcore shit. His rhymes are still witty. My only complaint with that though is a lot of his metaphors and analogies and references, to me, they seem outdated. Like, he had one reference talking about the Clippers. That happened last year. Like, in a world where everything is here now, gone tomorrow with social media, trends, they come and go really quick. It's just a different world. And I feel like Meth just keeps complaining about that. He seemed like just the old grumpy rapper that's complaining about these dudes' jeans too tight, y'all not doing the moves that we was making back in 93 and 94. To me, you just gotta get over that, man. It's just like, I appreciate the music from what it was back in the 90s, but you just gotta keep it back in the 90s, man. And this is coming from a guy who listens to pretty much 70% 90s hip-hop, and it kills me because this was that guy that just I felt like was the most youthful. He's not very intuitive when it comes to his music now. Like, in the past 5 to 10 years, I would say the guys that are more into the forefront of being more continuous with their music would be Ghost and Ray. I remember at one point Ray wasn't dropping anything. It was Only Built for Cuban Links, Lexi Diamonds, or whatever the name of that album was, and then one other album that nobody listened to, and it just pretty much didn't go anywhere. He was just relying on Wu-Tang albums and being a feature. And then after the Purple Tape 2 came out, I feel like he started dropping mixtape after mixtape after mixtape. So he pretty much got more intuitive with today's youth. So I know some 16-year-olds, some 17-year-olds who listen to Ray and Ghost who say they are dope. They may not know Wu-Tang's older music, but they are aware of who they are now from their music that they are producing now. I'm not sure people can say that about Meth anymore. I'm not hating on Meth. I love what he's doing. I love that he came out with, you know, some more music because I am a fan of the Clan, but I'm not gonna be, you know, a fanboy like that. Like, I know where they came from. I know what the potential is. If you are new to Wu-Tang's music, I would not suggest to listen to this as a first album to see what they're all about. I would recommend listening to Enter the 36 Chambers, to Cal, Only Built for Cuban Links, just to have an introduction to what the Clan was. Here, I felt like it was kind of an emotional rant at times. Him complaining about sharing money with the rest of the guys, stuff like that. Like, I don't want to hear that, man, because I feel like you bitching too much. And I love Meth, man. I hate to say that. I know there's probably gonna be a lot of people out there that may not agree with what I'm saying, but it's just, I'm a fan of all these guys. So when I hear them bashing each other, not to say that Meth was bashing them, but I'm not down with that, man. Like, I like them all for what they do. Even Deck dropped a mixtape not too long ago, and that shit was fire. He wasn't making references back from the 90s and stuff. He might have did that here and there. He was just making the music that he loves. I have seen interviews and I've read some articles where Meth did say that he's not catering to today's audience. He's just making the music that makes him happy. But if being grumpy and complaining about what's going on today makes you happy, then it's just, that's not something I can relate to. So as overall, I'm pretty much giving this album a 7 out of 10. The features definitely made the album a lot better than what it was. If you have heard it, let me know what you guys think in the comment box below, and let me know what you guys want me to cover next. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.